California, but it's like from outside, the North and South California, they're two different worlds, man.
What's the
Uh,
famous Mark Twain said? The coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco.
it's probably true. All the
Uh,
fog floating in, isn't it? What does the job? Anyway, welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on air, bringing it to you, I would say every Friday, but this is a midweek special, folks. And I'm going to start like peppering in a few more extra shows during the week, simply because there's so much to talk about in the world of recruiting.
mm.
And we can't wait for it to happen always on a Friday. So I'm delighted to have this conversation with you today. It's a topic I actually want to continue talking about through most of this year because I do think it's one of these escalating issues. It's not a one-time thing. It's not going to go away. It's going to be a persistent and escalating problem for us in recruiting. That's job candidate fraud. And I wanted to bring in a person who's been caring about this passionately for a long time, and a person who we've had some great conversations about what we do about this. It's Daniel Chait, CEO of Greenhouse, of course. So Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hung, always a pleasure. Looking forward to this conversation.
Great stuff. Okay, folks, let's do some sound checks real quick before we get sort of further and deeper into this chat. Actually, Michael, thank you for confirming already. Crowdcast is okay, but we should be broadcasting this live on a number of LinkedIn's as well. So if you're watching this on my LinkedIn, folks, let me know whether the audio and visual is fine. I do believe you might be watching this on Daniel's LinkedIn as well, and maybe even Greenhouse's own on the company page as well. So if you're watching it on those places, let me know in the comment thread whether the audio and visual is okay. Okay, great stuff. It looks like we're moving forward, which is good stuff. Okay, Daniel, we've had this conversation. I would say when was it? Maybe 4 months or so ago. We were very early to it. Can you give us your sense as to what's happened in that time frame? Like, what are you seeing from the proprietary data? What are you seeing from customer base and
Yeah,
so on?
we're continuing to hear these complaints from all sides, from companies that are looking to hire. They're saying that candidate volumes are going up, 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 and the quality and relevance of those candidates is going down, down, down. So they're being overwhelmed with applicants, whether it's due to misrepresentation, automation, scripts, bad guys, you name it. It's all in their funnels, and they're sick of it. They can't find the right people they need to hire, and they're drowning. From a job seeker standpoint, is equally bad. Someone is applying for a job today is easy to apply to a bunch of jobs, but it's getting harder and harder to get a job, and they're sick of feeling hopeless. It's they submit their resume and it's like, what happened to it? No one's getting back to me. So I'll try one of these automated tools. I'll submit 100 resumes or 1,000 resumes, and it's not working for them either.
It's a negative feedback loop, isn't it? As candidates get more frustrated by the lack of companies' ability to deal with the high applicant flow, which includes fraudulent candidates, then they're going to actually say, "Screw it! I need to max my chances. I got to use these tools."
For
They're not
sure.
being fraudulent; they're just being maximally optimal on the tooling, but it just expands the problem on the other side again, and it just keeps spinning round and round until what? What
Yeah, and it's
happens?
within this environment of all this noise, it provides a great sort of breeding ground for these fraudulent activities to take place because they're hiding amongst all the noise. And so, I mean, I talked to a customer literally yesterday who said they caught someone that they suspect but wasn't able to prove, but they suspect was a North Korean infiltrator at the hiring stage, and they were fortunate to be able to have done so. But it's not sensible to expect that everybody's going to catch them all the time when everyone's so overwhelmed with just trying to keep up with the day-to-day activity and making the hires they're trying to make.
Well, we actually suspect that most of the time we don't catch them. I mean, you look at, for instance, I mean, there was a very famous story a couple of weeks ago about that kid who had secured multiple jobs.
Yep. Yep.
And these were highly reputed businesses, super intelligent technology companies, all this type of stuff. He was running like three, four, five different jobs simultaneously with these businesses. And he just got through those processes. And for me, I looked at that as like, okay, there's clearly a broken system
Yeah.
because how are these companies actually doing the recruiting? And why is it that they're in a situation that they've basically been paying this guy payroll. I mean, it's not insignificant amount of money every month, right? So he's making a lot of cash out of it. And obviously he's come back later and said, look, he's fessed up and so on. But for one of those guys, there must be thousands of people that are doing this. And yeah, so the mitigation sort of that we've put, the position I see it is that we simply haven't got the systems in place to handle it. We're using archaic recruiting funnels, which, by the way, is your traditional hiring funnel, folks. I'm labeling that now as archaic because it's not suitable for today. We had a big crisis with the shift to remote that expanded the risk surface area. Now
For
we're
sure.
in AI remote.
Yeah.
We've got to change what we're doing. I mean, there's no way we can continue
For
like this.
sure. And it's almost, people's recruit, you talk about archaic, people's recruiting process still reflects basically a set of assumptions that were true 30 years ago, that people are applying to jobs kind of by thinking about the company and like writing a letter to them and putting a resume in an envelope and sending it off and hoping I get the job. Like, then they come on downtown to the office and like shake hands and do an interview. None of that's happening today. And yet you look at your typical hiring funnel and process, and it still reflects those outdated assumptions. So there's technology needed to help update these things, but there's a mindset as a hiring manager, as a recruiting team, as well as like updating those processes to reflect modern times. And to your point, AI is, it's cliche in this day and age to say AI is affecting it all, but here it is in hiring, and it's, AI slop is infecting everyone's hiring funnels. It's changing what it means to interview. It's changing what it means to assess a candidate's skills. Yeah, it's all happening.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Another thing that's worth bearing in mind is the people who are managing these archaic systems, their lived experience of getting a job as a candidate actually is through that whole process.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, if you're like got 5 years experience or so, if you're like 5 years plus experience, your experience as a candidate getting a job is actually completely archaic. Because the new what's happened in the last 5 years has completely changed what works and what
Mm.
doesn't. So we've also got operators that don't have a lived experience. As you say, their intuitive sense of what is right or wrong is already the wrong thing. It's totally outdated.
I mean, I would say none of us do. I mean, it's not they, and it's like this stuff is all changing so fast that it's hard for anyone to stay current with what's happening, and it's hard for job seekers themselves to know like what's okay, what's expected. Anthropic, famous AI company, recently published updated guidelines for job seekers, explaining to them how they are and aren't supposed to use AI in applying for jobs at Anthropic. And you're like, well, Anthropic has to explain that to people because people don't know, and the rules have changed from what they were 6 months ago, and they may be different in 6 months from now. But is it okay to use AI to customize your resume? Is it okay to use AI to help you with a take-home assignment that's part of an interview process? Or these rules are all very much changing, and like how to apply for jobs, how to interview for jobs, how to get a job. It's all new stuff.
All new stuff. How do you think the recruiting funnel, because you at Greenhouse obviously have put products, the ATS has designed a lot of products around the hiring funnel. As you say, it's a digitalization of what you expect to happen. And so you're very familiar with how a recruiting funnel works. Do you think that it starts becoming re-engineered? Like a classic example would be background check usually happens at the end of end of the pipe, but doesn't that need to hop to the front now, where it's like, what's the point in processing people when we actually may be processing fraudulently, whatever. So
You got it. Yeah, people are having to put a lot of their assumptions up to scrutiny and change the way the process works in terms of the scale, the order, how we think about these different things. So you talk about background checks, which was typically the thing like, oh, we interviewed this person, and just before we make a hire, let's go make sure that they don't have a criminal background check or something that's going to disqualify them from the job. But now employers are saying, I don't even know if the person who's at this interview is the same person that sent in the job application, because we're seeing deep fakes and we're seeing people have a friend take the interview for them. And so I want to make sure every step of the process, it's the same person that applied, that is interviewing, that I'm sending an offer to, that's showing up on the first day of the job. And so that's a great example of where the funnel is basically completely inverted from what it used to be. Sourcing is another one, by the way. It wasn't that long ago that companies were doing everything they could to try to reach out and find some applicants. You think about a tech job, or an executive role, or a sales job where the talent was really in short supply not that long ago. Companies were sending out, the whole conversation was like, is it okay for them to send out hundreds of cold emails to strangers and ask them to apply for jobs? And now those same companies are like waking up in the morning and I got 2,000 resumes in my inbox to try to sift through. Like, where do I even start? And they're certainly not going to want to be reaching out to people. And so it's also about helping them manage that flow and constrain it and sift through it and search it to find the talent, as opposed to going out there and trying to hook people.
When you say not so long ago, we know when that was. It was like 2021, right? That's what, 3 years ago, 4 years or so ago.
Wow.
And the entire thing from all the entire ecosystem was trying to do is to open up, like reduce friction. We wanted to get more people, easy apply. We want, reduce everything, all this type of stuff to try and increase the numbers of people coming into the top because we didn't
Yeah.
have enough candidates. Now, not only do we truly have more candidates, but we also have candidates like we can't see through the noise anymore because a lot of those candidates are, let's say, low intentional candidates. Low intentional, by the way, what I mean by this is that they may have set a bot to go and like do an automated apply to hundreds and thousands of jobs that without even knowing what's going on. They may not have scrutinized your job, but they've construct. Sorry, go ahead then.
Yeah, so it's been a nice love fest so far, Hung. It's been about 9 minutes. I'm going to take my first disagreement with you. um,
Right, go on.
you're right. It's gotten easier and easier to apply for jobs, and partly because of stuff that companies like ours have done to make it easy to apply for a job online. And one click, you can fill in the form and all that. I think that's a good thing. I don't think having a lot of bureaucracy or red tape, or what you say friction, is helpful. Friction in physics is defined as energy that's wasted in non-productive
Yeah.
way. And so I would say the answer of how do we make the process work better for both sides is not add friction, make it harder, make it worse, limit who can apply to jobs. I think the answer has to be to enable the humans, the job seekers, the people that are trying to get the job, to apply more energy in productive ways, to actually help showcase who they are, to showcase their skills and talents, to find ideal jobs for themselves, with better ways to search, and to do so in a way that's connected to who they are and what they bring to the table, as opposed to being just like AI doom loop arms race. And so I hear people say, "Oh, there needs to be more friction in the process. There should be a 24-hour waiting period. There should be, less automation." And I'm like, no, I don't think we just need to annoy people so they stop applying to jobs. I think we need to make it so that they can do a better job of running their own job search. And I think companies like ours have an obligation to try to do that.
How does that work on the recruit, like the employer side, though, Dan? Because I
Yeah,
totally get what you're saying. Like, the ideal case is, of course, people should be able to comfortably apply, but at the same time, what we really want to do is reward the people that are intentional applicants.
that's right.
And yet now you might have a person who I think is an unintentional applicant. Now that's not to say he or she is not able to apply, or indeed not be fairly judged for the application.
Yep.
But I think there's a distinction between someone who's done some research about a job and thought, you know what, this is great, I'm applying to it, compared to another person that's maybe set up a bot to go and apply to 100 jobs a week. It's
I
like,
think this is one of those ways where, the traditional hiring process is reflected in a lot of online processes. It doesn't work anymore. The traditional hiring process is you kind of get resumes in the mail and you read them in the order that they came in, right? And like that works if you have a few a day and you open up the mail. It's like how you run a deli. You open up a deli and people come in, they take a ticket, they stand in line, they order their sandwich. But like if 2,000 people were coming into your deli, it wouldn't work, right? It's kind of like that. So you can't just show all the inbox in order and just go through them, in chronology. What you need to do is you need to help the real applicants, the most high propensity applicants, rise to the top and stand out. And so we have done. I'll give you some examples. We've done at Greenhouse. We created the My Greenhouse, which is a candidate portal that candidates and job seekers can use to go in and manage their job search. And we've given two features in there so far, and more on the way, that help them and help employers do a better job here. One is a feature called My Dream Job, and what that is each job seeker gets one a month. That they can indicate of all the jobs they're applying to, they can tag one as their dream job. And what that means is I have to place a bet as a job seeker. Of all the jobs I could apply to, this is the one I want to stand out for. This is the one I want the most, and this is the one I think I'm going to be most likely to get. Because if I don't get it, I wasted my ticket, right? And on the employer side, instead of just seeing all the job seekers in order, you get a little priority bucket. You see people that were referred by your employees. You see people that mark this as their dream job before others. And it's just like a better signal. It's a better way to think about what order should you look at all those resumes. And dream job candidates convert at a 4 times higher rate as a result. So you
Yeah,
have a 4 times
yeah,
better chance of getting a job with this feature, which makes the process way more efficient for both sides.
I
And so
like it.
that's an example of how you can kind of bring some of the humanity and bring some of that person's desires and focus back into the process to help make it better for both sides.
I'm gonna give you some unsolicited product advice, Stan. Are you
Sweet.
ready?
Yeah, man.
Um,
There's free, yeah, free
this
consulting here. I love it.
this may not be implementable, but this reminds me very much of an idea that I had, which I think actually we need to implement in democratic processes, which is the quadratic voting sort of system. Have
Okay.
we ever had this conversation?
No, but you're
So
throwing math terms out here. Yeah, you're
okay,
some explanations. Let's hear it.
so instead of a binary choice saying,
Yeah.
I want this is my dream job, that's one dream
Okay.
job, no. You give the person 100 credits or you give
Uh,
them a quantity of
uh,
credits
yep.
that they can then distribute as they see fit. Now they can say, you know what, I'm going to go 100, 1 credit per
Yep.
100 job.
Yep.
I'm whatever. They're all my 100 jobs. You separate them from 1,000. But let's say there's going to be someone that says, you know what, I really like this. I'm going to go 80 on that.
Yeah. I'm
And
all
then
in.
there's another
Yeah.
person that says 95, and
Yeah.
another person says 100, but you lose that 100, right? It's like you've spent it. And maybe that way you could even order people based on how committed they are because they've really gone for it and they've basically denied themselves other opportunities because they love this opportunity so much more. So anyway, I reckon that's it. Well, anyway, no one's going to implement this because it's not that complicated, but I don't think anybody is going to do it. But I like it because it gives the granularity,
Yeah.
and it helps you order from what is how committed they are really. Go ahead.
I think I think the suggestion, the part of it that makes sense is, you need to give people tools to help them express what's important to them. And whether it's a dream job or something like you're describing, I see someone in the comments has a different way to do it. I think the more you empower job seekers to do these things, the better it's going to be for employers trying to identify who are the people I really ought to be focused on. And the better it's going to be for job seekers to have kind of a fair, even handed way to stand out. It's not pay for play. It's not based on favoritism. It's an objective available to anyone kind of system. And so we're doing things like that. The other things we're doing, for example, we've launched is job alerts, where as a job seeker in your My Greenhouse profile, you can subscribe to job alerts to companies you're interested in. And so when those new jobs come out from that company, you're among the first people to find out about it. And data shows that the first people to apply for jobs are way more likely to be interviewed and way more likely to get them than subsequent. So it's another way that you can put a little bit of effort into searching around, find the ones you really care about, subscribe to job alerts, and it'll help put you at the front of the line. It also gives a really useful signal to those companies. They know, like, oh, this is somebody that subscribed to alerts at my company, right? So I think
This
whether
is
it's your system or others, like, I think we'll keep going, and there's a lot more that we want to be able to do.
this is what Bradley's mentioned in the chat actually, who said a similar thing on LinkedIn, where basically, folks, has anyone ever done this? So basically, LinkedIn, you're allowed to follow your company page, and it looks like there's a feature there which allows you to post a private job, so to say.
Yeah.
So it goes maybe as a message, to like a notification to only the followers first. And then it goes as a secondary option to people who haven't decided to follow. I think that seems to be smart. I mean, again, there's a kind of it's going to be game situation. What about the person who just likes follows every
Yeah, the
company and
question is where's the real signal? And when, in a world where nobody knows to do that or where that's a rare thing, then sure. But, the pushing that button's free. So to your point, someone could push it everywhere. So I think it's got to have some amount of signal there. And I think that's part of where
quadratic voting is the solution, Dan. I know you don't like it, but just sit on it for a little bit.
it's not that I don't
It's
like
the
it. I don't
solution.
understand it, but it's different than saying I don't like it. I think that might have been a Homer Simpson quote. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What about identity? Because this is all well and good, right? So it's
Yeah.
all well and good saying, look, we're gonna help people. All the signaling, but there's going to be folks that we don't know are actually the right person in the flow. And there was a really interesting advert. It was a job advert, I think. It was one of these meta situations. It was a job advert for a person who was a professional interviewer. Uh,
Oh,
so there was
yeah.
a company that basically is going to deploy professional interviewers on the candidate side
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
order to convert for you, and they were recruiting for
You
these
send in
people.
like a ringer, right? It's like, you show
Correct.
up for the neighborhood pickup basketball and you've got LeBron James as like your cousin or something. Yeah.
Right, and it's on like, okay, remote sort of interview. It's easier to fake, etc. How are you going to do the identity side? I mean, are we at the point like in terms of how we do banking, where you got to put your ID in front of a camera? Are we there yet?
Yeah, I mean, people are definitely worried about this issue. People are worried about the issue that you described, which is the person taking the interview the same person that I think they are, or is it someone on their behalf? They're also worried about this issue that we talked about earlier about these kind of state-sponsored, infiltration efforts by, bad guys. And so they want to know who they're dealing with. I had a CISO, a chief information security officer, at a customer of mine say to me, they're a remote first organization. They don't have a physical building where everybody goes and badges in the morning. They have online Zoom, and so he said, whoever I send that laptop and password to, that's who's in my company. That's who's allowed in the perimeter of my four walls. And so I need to know who those people are. And so you're hearing these terms in the security community like talent supply chain and talent supply chain security and integrity, and it's like people need to know, an organization know who they're dealing with for those reasons. And so yeah, I think the idea of identifying yourself in the hiring process has always been there. Let's remember, it used to be in person and now it just hasn't really been happening online. People are just kind of ignoring it. I think it can't be ignored anymore with the rise of AI, with the rise of remote work. These things are becoming too important. And so yeah, we just announced, and I'm sure others will follow, um, uh, a product in Real Talent, which is meant to help companies identify the job seeker and to help job seekers easily and in a fair way, make sure that they are who they say they are and prove that to the company. So it's pretty simple. You show a selfie on your phone. If it's the first time through, you also show your ID, whether it's a driver's license or whatever. It matches those two up. And from then on, it's just like your face is your identity. You do a selfie just like you would at any kind of, other type of kiosk that we all do these days, or any kind of online. If you've unlocked your phone with your face, everyone does it. And I think that'll be a reality for a lot of online business situations now, whether it's signing a document for a mortgage on your house, interviewing for a job, or any number of other online activities that we do where it matters who you are.
Yeah, I think we just have to get used to it, unfortunately. I mean, we talk about candidate experience, but I think candidates are going to have to just suck this one up, because what else do you expect the company to do? The caveat I've got on this is, I mean, there is a diversity and inclusion angle when it comes down to photo ID. Like in the UK, for instance, we've had problems here implementing a photo ID for voting, for instance,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
know people, and I think it's the same in the US. So we know that lower socioeconomic groups are far less likely to have a photo ID of any type, because they don't travel as much, they don't have a vehicle, let's say. So it's really tough. Like, how do we deal with that? I'm not sure we can.
Well, so I'll respond to that. That is a good question. First of all, candidates have to suck it up. Was your comment, not mine? I don't co-sign to that. I would say, just to be clear for anyone listening, I would say somewhat differently that this is a process available that we're empowering, but there's absolutely an opportunity to opt out, and candidates can and will do that. Both legal reasons in the EU, for example, there is a law that requires that people can opt out of a biometric process, or to your point, you don't have an ID, you don't have a photo ID that's relevant to this process, you don't want to show it for privacy or other reasons, like that's okay, you can opt out. And there's other ways that you can show who you are. They're just not as automated, they're not as easy, they're not just a selfie. Maybe you have to have a longer conversation on video with someone at the company's HR team. Maybe you have to go to their office in person. So there's other ways around this. I think the goal here is let's make sure that everybody is who they say they are and do it in a way that's as easy and comfortable and quick and painless as possible. And for most people, but not everyone, that's, yeah, I'm going to do a selfie on my phone, I'm going to aim my driver's license at it, and we're done. And for some people, it isn't. For some people, they'd rather do it over a video call with somebody that's in the HR team, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and the reality is, as we're trending in this direction with sort of AI, deepfakes, and so on, it's less. The possibility of getting away with not having photo ID, I think, is starting to recede. Like your ability to interact with the AI-enabled world
Yeah.
is going to be it's heavily compromised, I think. So, we're going to have to let go of some of this stuff if we want to kind of get in on on
Yeah,
on
well,
on this.
and the status quo, right? What's happening today is not acceptable. What's happening today, aside from people just getting jobs that they shouldn't get or faking their way through it, which is bad for legitimate job seekers, is like companies are asking people to show their driver's license on the camera during an interview, where the interviewer can see not just their picture but their date of birth, other things, whether they need corrective, like there's a lot of personal information in there that you may not want to get out, that you're showing directly to the interviewer. So what's happening today isn't great by any stretch. I think we can do better. Um, and so, yeah, I think, having the opportunity to show that you are who you say you are is a reality. And I think as AI gets better, the stuff we write, who we look like online, all of those things are going to need to have a lot more evidence that it's really you.
Yeah, yeah. And there probably will be I mean, there already are services which basically go through the process of scoring like risk profile. Like they give you a score in terms of your risk based on the information that they're able to collect. Stuff like LinkedIn has become almost a verification of record. How recent was your LinkedIn profile? Is your picture matching with other social media stuff? And it's like, okay, great. And I know a lot of people who intuitively think, I don't want Big Brother to know this. I'm kind of on your side in that respect. But I also think that it's almost impossible to resist because you've got to understand that the kind of the opportunity for fraud has to be closed. We have to mitigate this. Um, International hiring, Dan. We're talking about photo ID and all this stuff. This is great, but it's more obviously we're going to be better at sort of processing people in country because we might be familiar with a form of ID being used.
Right.
However, like, do we know what does an ID look like if we're recruiting globally? We have no clue what the heck an ID looks like if you're for a
Right.
Colombian citizen. How do we do this? Are there international global services that seem to work or what?
You got it. I mean, I certainly don't know what those driver's licenses look like. You don't, and your hiring managers and interviewers definitely don't. And so, yeah, we need to rely on trusted third-party services who specialize in this kind of thing. Greenhouse announced a partnership with Clear, for example, who's already processed tens of millions of international and domestic travelers in the U.S. Their Clear One platform, which is totally separate from the airport thing, is being used by big brands and online services like DocuSign and Okta to verify identities, as well as offline use cases in person, like when you rent a power tool to prove who you are. And so it's a very trusted. It's obviously they've seen lots of these things, and they have ways to resolve discrepancies. They don't just match your name, like if it's maybe spelled differently on your driver's license versus your resume. Like they handle all that stuff really well, in a way that's going to be, I think, make a lot of people feel very comfortable that some of the concerns you mentioned earlier, certain if you're don't have the same form of driver's license as someone, or if you might even worry like, hey, my skin is darker, I'm not sure it's going to show up. I've had the experience where cameras don't recognize me, or the sink doesn't recognize my hand, the automatic sinks. Like those issues are real for those type of for those type of issues happening to lots of people. And we're very happy that the company we've partnered with in Clear has really centered a lot of those concerns, and will be very inclusive in how they roll this feature out.
Do you know what? There's going to be a lot more work needed on all of this because I'm just thinking about things like how do you match up, how do you prove someone's identity is often like things like name matching, for instance. Like your name, when you book a flight, it's like your name, they instruct you, say, hey, your name has to be exactly as it is on your passport ID. Otherwise, you're not boarding the flight. And I think, okay, that's totally fine. I understand that.
That's right.
However, there's multiple circumstances where that isn't the case. Like for instance, like my name, my true name on my passport is not what I use on LinkedIn.
I'm sure
So
that's
I
the
can't
case.
get verified on LinkedIn without changing my name.
Correct.
And it's like, do I want to do that? Because I'm wrapped up with the brand now, so I can't really do this. And it's like, okay, I'm going to get hammered by LinkedIn's algorithm because I'm not a verified person. Another example, marriage and divorce, particularly on women's side. So a woman takes a man's name
You got it.
traditionally. Okay, what if there's a divorce or whatnot? Or actually, even the marriage experience might then create a situation where different
You got it.
IDs have different names. So suddenly you've got a diversity problem that, okay, what if you inadvertently disqualifying people or damaging people's scores on something that's cultural
You
and
got it.
social
It's a
rather than
big
anything
issue,
else?
and there's many more such use cases. I mean, if you're a transgender person, your government may actually be actively hostile to you changing your name or make it really hard. Um, I talked to someone at one of our conferences who just goes by Susan professionally, but her name is Catherine on her driver's license. Like, just is what it is. So these things are happen and they're common. And I'm not trying to make light of it. It's real for if you're someone like that in one of those situations. And so it's very important to us that not be a limiting factor in you getting a job. And so a couple of things I'll say about how at least we're doing ID verification with Real Talent. Firstly, is the way that your identity is matched against your government ID is not simply look at the spelling exactly of the first name and exactly the last name, and if one character is missing, you're doomed. It's a much more complicated and nuanced compare. It looks at, I think, 60 plus data points, including things like address, date of birth, your face, all kinds of other demographic information about you online and off. And so there's a real strong possibility to match most of the situations that we've talked about already. If you've got a married name, if you're, say, an immigrant where you've maybe Americanized or otherwise changed your name, and those type of things. So by and large, that is how it is meant to work, and it will work for many people. Secondly, we know it's not going to work for everyone. We know that there's going to be probably 1 to 2% of the case where for whatever reason, it doesn't immediately make a match. And we're designing it from the get-go with the understanding that that's just going to be a routine happening. And so we're not trying to stop anyone getting on an airplane here. That's the good news. Is if you're showing up to a job interview and you get prompted to enroll in the Clear app, and it doesn't work for you at the moment, you're still going to go do the job interview, right? And then there's a resolution process that'll happen in the background so that if and when by the time you get hired, that's all been noted and taken care of. And so you're not going to be disadvantaged. You're not going to be stopped from getting a job. We have a saying at Greenhouse that we talk about a lot, which is every time we're looking at numbers and data and dashboards, that behind every one of those numbers is a human being trying to get a job. And we take that really
Mm.
seriously. So yeah, it looks easy. You're like, oh, just look at the person and scan their thing and just call it a. It's like there's a ton of real technology and a ton of nuance behind how we're able to deliver this, and that's why we had to choose such a sophisticated partner in Clear that's been doing this for so long.
Take me through the candidate experience, Dan, for a person who's, let's say, going through a process. The
Yep.
company's using Greenhouse and they've
Yep.
implemented Clear. So, what kind of things am I doing to get through the verification side?
Yeah. So by and large, the companies will have different parts in the process when they expect you to verify yourself. So it may be that they want to know, is the person at this interview stage the same person that applied? It may be that they want to know, is the person that's getting the offer paperwork the same person that interviewed? So whatever those stages are in the process, you'll be prompted as a job seeker to verify yourself with Clear. And the first time, and only the first time that you go through that, you will show your ID and take a selfie, and it'll associate that together. And in the normal case, which is most people, that takes about a minute or a minute and a half at most, and then you're through. And then subsequently, any other time, let's say you take a second interview, or they prompt you again later in the process, or you go to another company and apply again to somewhere else, you just do the selfie. You don't need to take your wallet out ever again, because your selfie is the identity proof that you need once you're enrolled. And that takes under a minute. That takes like 30 seconds. And so it's pretty straightforward. And then again, there are these, sort of side paths if you want to opt out, if your name doesn't match perfectly or some other reason, if you're, and in those cases, you'll just have an alternate resolution path where you're dealing with, customer service personnel and the company's HR to assert that you are who you say you are. And the reality is, like, those things are going to happen. It's how people get jobs, for hundreds of years. It'll keep out the North Koreans, and the deep fakes, and do just as good of a job as anything at helping protect companies.
Yeah, and it's basically like a level of, it's almost like if anybody here has ever recruited security cleared folks, it's basically that, but it's going to mainstream security cleared processes. And that's that, you can see it's an extra step of administration. Of course it is, but it's also like extra work that we need to do. Like we need to apply ourselves to it, because who else is going to be responsible for who gets in through the door? You can't blame the hiring manager. It's the recruiting team that is responsible for security here. So you have to get busy with implementing some service that gives you that security.
And to your point, it's in everyone's best interest. If you're a job seeker, you don't want to be sitting in a competitive interview process against a team of trained North Korean spies. If you're an organization that's making a hire, like, you don't want to have to worry, should I trust the person I'm hiring, or is that interview really the person that I thought I'm interviewing? And so I think this is meant to be a simple and easy process to use. We're making sure to handle, as many use cases as we can that are outside the mainstream, because although it works, easily for 80 to 90% of the people, all the work and all the design and all the issues come in, the remaining folks. And so you pay attention to those edge cases and to the most vulnerable people. And then you get a process that works great for everyone. And if it doesn't work great for everyone, we haven't done our job.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So that's the ID verification aspect of the fraud challenge.
That's a piece of
Other aspects, yeah, there's loads, right? It's all like all information. I mean, I do think that AI is going to cause us to really have a trust problem with anything digitally created, whether it's synchronous or otherwise. What about like the skills and capability of the person? I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen technologies. Everyone's like dual screen right now. I guarantee you. There's, however thrilling our chat is on screen, Dan, there's people like the dual screen with their mobile at the same time. But how do we stop sort of someone who's getting that advice via a secondary device, or that is that possible to do? Is there a way to kind of reduce that risk other than a face-to-face in-person interview?
Yeah, look, people are doing that today. There are commercial offering, there are products you can go buy that'll help you pass job interviews or coding tests today, that basically, to your point, is second screen. They sort of sit on top of your, whatever window you're interviewing in on your laptop. They sort of sit on top of that and listen to the question and type out the answer. And then you're just the person reading that answer to the camera. And it's a problem. It's a bit of a cat and mouse game here. Like, these companies are figuring out, it's kind of like what happened in online gaming, where there's, like, if you've ever played these online, multiplayer online games, there's a huge problem of cheating in that world too, where, it's a shoot 'em up game, and magically the other guy has like perfect aim, and he's, and like, well, it turns out he's using a computer assisted, tool to help cheat, and the companies block it, and they find out a new way. And I think it goes back and forth. I think we're kind of in that cycle now. And so there are online tools to help detect whether you've like switched to a different tab or whether the content you're typing seems like it's from ChatGPT, and we'll be in that arms race. And I think it's never going to be perfect, but I think it's one more tool that you have. And hiring's never been perfect to begin with. So again, perfection is not the comparison here. But can we help alleviate the problems and give a more fair evaluation process?
Yeah, and to be fair on products like Greenhouse, like, do you see that as part of your role to support companies that way, or do you think actually the ecosystem, so that some of the vendors are gonna specialize in this space to do that? We don't want to get involved in product
That area
assessments
in
because
particular, yeah, it's highly technical and specialized, and so there are a bunch of different providers out there in the ecosystem hacking away, working at different ways to try to tackle the problem of kind of remote proctoring would be the term. And we're going to do some of that, and the ecosystem will do some of that. And then, as I say, like we're in this kind of arms race or cat and mouse game, and we'll see how it evolves in the years ahead. But there's another piece of the puzzle too, which is like a little bit more practical. If you're watching this, thing you can do today, which is you can recognize that we are now in an AI enabled world, both for job seekers, but also for employees. You're hiring people, after all, who are hopefully, if your company is doing good stuff, using AI at work. And so you want to think about updating your evaluation to include when do you want to evaluate somebody's use of AI and when do you want to evaluate somebody specifically not using AI, and then communicate that. Tell the candidates, hey, for this part, it's great if you use AI, to fill in the spreadsheet or whatever the task is. But for this part, we really want to get to know what's happening, in your head outside of AI. So please don't. I think most job seekers are open to that and listening for those ideas and will play along. And I think that's something everyone can and should be doing today to just make sure that your assessments are keeping up with this development in AI.
Right, right. And in fact, sort of you mentioned Anthropic at the beginning, but as you said, they updated their previously don't use AI position and they switched it to actually here's the guidance on how you do use AI to better reflect obviously the product, what they need an assessment that was on brand. But also reflection of okay, it's impossible to police this. Is the better thing to do would be to guide the candidate on usage and actually assess them for their fluency. Because we probably don't want to hire people that can't use AI at a certain level if you're
I
Anthropic, for
mean, these
instance.
things are changing. So the technology is changing so quickly. The societal rules around it are changing so quickly. The rules in the workplace are changing. So look, I'm old enough to remember when people said nobody would apply for jobs online. It's too important. It's too much of a high touch thing. Like you're never going to submit a resume to a website. That's crazy, right? And so, technology can really upend a lot of assumptions that people have about how things work or what's proper. And I think we're seeing that in AI. In fact, I've had customers tell me at Greenhouse not that long ago, like a year ago, hey, our company is very AI averse. Do not talk to us about your AI roadmap. We don't want any AI in the product. We're not going to use it. And then 6 months later, say like we want as much AI as we can get. We just hired an AI chief AI officer. We're AI all in, and like how much can you deliver us? How quickly? And I think these things are happening at all kinds of workplaces around as the technology evolves and as people are kind of catching up to it. So hiring is part of that.
Absolutely. I think the quickest way to become AI enabled is obviously to hire individuals that are kind of, I won't say natively AI enabled, but they've kind of self-taught themselves to be that way. So you don't necessarily need to go through a big ramp up journey with them, because they're bringing that skill set in. They may even be a resource to help upskill your incumbent staff. Yeah, very, very good. Okay, moving further forward, let's project outwards 12 months, Dan. I've kind of suggested, you know what, we're not going to stop with the increase of fraud is going to increase. The use of AI in a non-fraudulent way, but in a non-useful way for employers is going to increase. Where do you see the situation in 12 months' time? Do we, for instance, have I mean, do we, for instance, have a very heavily AI to AI sort of part top of the funnel, and then a very narrow human to human sort of conversation. So humans are really out of it. We're not even reading CVs anymore. We're certainly not interacting on first contact with candidates anymore because we can't ID whether they're a real candidate or they're an AI agent deployed by the candidate. We're only going to be involved, when there's verification and interest on both sides. Do you see that happening? And if so, like when is that the default situation?
I continue to see two paths. I do think that there's going to continue to be a human path. As I described earlier, I think we'll be doing more and more of that, where people can really sit down and think about what's the job I want, what's the job that's best for me, how do I use my talent and skills to try to get that job. And we're going to do a lot. We're going to do as much as we can to try to empower people to run their job search that way and have it less be an AI arms race. So I think that'll continue. And to your point, it's going to continue to get more ubiquitous. AI is going to be, creating more connections, more content, spitting out more slop than ever. And companies and job seekers alike are going to have to deal with it. And so, yeah, I think in that world, we're both going to have more ways that the human can contribute, and I think the human becomes more valuable in that world. That uniqueness actually becomes more rare, and the rest of it becomes a lot more automated. Already today, really the state of the art is you're interacting with a chatbot on someone's website. We all do that with customer service today, whether it's an airline or paying your electrical bill. We do that with companies' customer service. That's going to be par for the course in your top of funnel recruiting. AI interviewing is coming. I think it's going through the Gandhi
Yes.
cycle, right? The Gandhi cycle, first they ignore us, then they laugh at us, then we win. I think it's, going through that very quickly. And I think a year from now, the idea that you're going to take an actual job interview from an AI bot will seem a lot more reasonable than it seems today. Um, and then everything that used to be manual as far as scheduling interviews and collecting feedback from people and looking at all the calendars, like we're already automating all that. So what's left is, to your point, the like human to human later in the funnel. Who is this person really, as a coworker, and who are we offering to them as on our side that they can get to know. I think that definitely is a future we're building towards.
Yeah, folks, does this sound real to you, or is it sci-fi? Where do you think it's going to be? Let us know in the comments. Love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Are we already at the point where top of funnel is already AI to AI dialogue, and then we're going to find a way to whittle it down so that actually the human to human is just deeper in the funnel and actually a lot narrower? Okay, how are Greenhouse going to dedupe candidate records, Dan? Or are you planning to do this? So here's what I'm thinking. Um, Candidates are going to create multiple identities online simply because ChatGPT is going to just like reinvent their CVs all the time, right? Now, let's say they then deploy an AI bot to say,
Yeah.
okay, I want you to automated apply to all of these jobs that I've said I'm interested in. They're not going to really spot, okay, that's a greenhouse or not a greenhouse type of hosted job. You might get loads of identities of the same person coming into your system. Are you going to hold those as separate identities that each may be verified against the same ID? Or are you going to meet them with some sort of say, hey, listen, we've already got you on record, you know, can you verify this is your ID? And then go with are you going to be the system holder of record? Like what's your product strategy on that?
I think you just made a great argument why everyone should use Greenhouse. Yeah, like so again, with real talent that we're launching this year, candidates will be verified against an ID along the hiring process if the employer sets that up. And so the idea that you're going to have multiple online identities, that you can put whatever you want on the internet. It's the internet after all. But if you're going to apply to a job, you're going to apply to a job as a specific person. And that specific person better be you.
So basically, Greenhouse is going to hold this data, right? And ultimately, let's say I have applied to a job with a company, they're using Greenhouse with this application flow, this type of resume. I see a second job. I've amended my resume, not
Sure.
necessarily in a fraudulent way. I've simply adapted it to what the job is, and I've got a
Absolutely.
second identity in there. what is my experience on
I
your
hear you.
side? Are you going to
Yeah,
base?
I guess I wouldn't call that a different identity. I mean, sure, if you're applying for a, developer job in one company and a software testing job in another company, you might put different stuff on your resume and emphasize different parts of your experience. That's not a different identity. If I apply to a job, I say I'm Daniel Shade, and then I apply to another job, I say I'm Daniel Smith. That's saying you're someone that you're not. And so that's kind of where I was drawing the distinction is like you can be the same person, but just like today and always in Greenhouse, you can have as many different job applications with as many different application materials, whether it's cover letter, resume, email that you want. And so I don't see anything changing any of that. And to your point, if anything, it's getting easier and more common with AI for job seekers to have a bunch of different customized versions. Every time I apply to a job, I want a customized, tweaked version of my resume, a customized, tweaked version of my cover letter that speaks exactly to that company. And so that's becoming, if anything, more common. Again, I graduated college in 1995. You could print your resume out at Kinko's. Your choices were cream or ivory paper. I was not customizing it for every job I applied to, but now that is par for the course. So I think that'll continue. I think that'll accelerate as it gets easier and easier. But I wouldn't say that it's the same thing as having two identities, which is really
Yeah, I
who
think you're
you
right.
are.
Yeah, yeah. So I was probably misusing the sense of identity. Let's call it entity though. So let's say from how we visualize this on a diagrammatic, Greenhouse will hold one entity. That's my identity that I've ID verified by Clear. I may then subsequently apply multiple times, different or same resume, whatever, but it'll be
For sure.
matched against that ID that you've held and then verified in that way. It'll be okay. That's definitely a version of Hong, let's say.
Yeah, well, we're not
And
going to hold your ID, right? Clear will verify your ID up front. They don't hang on to like a copy of it or anything. They match it to your
right,
face.
okay.
Your face then becomes from then on how you authenticate that you are who you say you are. And so
Mhm.
when you apply to subsequent jobs, you just show your face and it's like, oh, got it. We know who that person is. They're already enrolled in the system. We can verify that they are who they say they are. If you're not, then you get flagged as someone who's saying they're someone different. But it doesn't change who you don't your profile will be your kind of, we call it a my greenhouse. You'll have a my greenhouse profile. You can create them today, by the way.
Mhm.
Hundreds of thousands of people have already done this. Create a my greenhouse profile. You can look at all the places you've already applied to. For example, you can see the status of those jobs. You can apply to new jobs. You can subscribe to job alerts. You can autofill and you can manage like what happens when you autofill, how much does it fill out, and update your contact information in one spot and have it be reused everywhere. So there's a lot of like niceties for a job seeker that are in there, as a my greenhouse profile. And then when you authenticate with Clear, that identity is tied to your my greenhouse profile. So you don't have to like
Interesting question.
refill out a
Yeah.
form in multiple places.
Interesting question with Lindsay, but I think you might have answered it already. I mean, different email. I think if your face is the identity, the key token for identity,
Yeah.
then it's totally cool to use different email. That's one of the things that does change now and again. So yes, I think I get it. But good question, Lindsay. That's kind of along the lines as I was thinking. Like, is Clear going to like clone like multiple identities or not? Or is it going to be a case where one identity is going to just verify against multiple versions or flavors of that person. Um, okay, let's go down. I wouldn't say a dark path. I just think it's a normal path, an inevitable path. Some customers are going to say, "Hey, listen, I'd really like to know like what kind of candidate behaviors that you have, Dan." I mean, you've got a record of this person historically. Do they drop out what's their dropout rate on interviews, for instance? Do they renege on offers? Are you gonna like provide that sort of information, or how do you feel about that sort of thing coming into frame?
For those who aren't able to see my face, I'm scrunching up my nose in disgust. Yeah, no, like when you apply to a company, the relationship between you as a job seeker and that company is between the two of you. So that company should know the history. If you've applied to jobs there before and they interviewed you before and came away with some conclusions, positive or negative, they get to keep that and look at that later when you apply next time, because that's only sensible. And you would expect that as well. If you showed up next time and they said, "Have we ever spoken before?" You'd think they were nuts. So that all makes a lot of sense to both sides and should and will remain. The idea that you can extract that information and say, "Oh, Hung, you went and applied over at ABC Corporation, and now you're trying to get a job at XYZ Corporation. Your interview results from that other company are going to transfer over here." That's not at all appropriate or proper. We would not want to do that, uh, because that is, again, proprietary information, as between that company and that particular job seeker. What we do have is information that the job seeker puts in their My Greenhouse profile that they give us to say, these are the kind of jobs I want. So I'm interested in working remotely, or I'm not interested in working remotely. I want a job in marketing or in tech. I have this many years of experience. Like, they'll put information into Greenhouse as a job seeker so that Greenhouse can surface to them more relevant job openings. But if they go interview for those jobs and fail them all, it's not like we're going to delete you from those jobs and not show you any more of them later. Like, that doesn't.
Yeah, because I think some people might have it in their mind to say, "Oh my goodness, you've struggled getting a job, you've had these issues, and suddenly it becomes a persistent problem, sort of going forward." I wonder whether there might be a toggle on, toggle off though, in terms of like, let's say you're getting assessed in some way, and you're very happy for other companies to get access to your assessment result because you feel, you know what, if that means I can skip a similar assessment they have, I'm toggling yes to that. And I wonder how many candidates would actually switch that on if they want to, just get through the system and say, you know what, I'm not that bothered about other companies knowing about how I perform.
Yeah, you have to be careful. It sounds like a subtle distinction, but it's actually a huge distinction between, was the company assessing you? Were you doing an interview with this company, which again is very much their information, versus as a job seeker, am I taking an assessment and putting that in as part of my job search, just like you would a credential? Say, I've got this degree, or I've got this certificate. You might also say, hey, I took this quiz, or I passed this coding test, or whatever other assessments. And you can imagine a world where Greenhouse makes it easier for job seekers to put more of who they are in those ways into their profile, again, so that they can kind of use more of their own energy to help direct the job search in productive ways. Like, that makes sense. But I don't think it's the same thing as to say, oh, you had a job interview, you get to like take that out of that context and use it for someone else.
No, you're absolutely right. But at the same time, I was simply thinking about what we do with the silver medalist scenario, right? Where okay, this person's gone through process, they're excellent. We've actually just had to offer someone else because that was a slightly better candidate, but we would have offered this individual for the two jobs. Wouldn't it be great if that individual could be shared to other companies who are hiring to similar? I think certain graduate organizations do that, where graduate entry, they've gone through flow, and it's like, you
Yeah.
know what? Why put these kids through the same sort of assault course? Like, we've got the information here from this other business, and we've got a relationship with those guys. We'll just simply port them
Yeah,
over.
there's been some attempts over the years, dating back even 15 or more years ago. Um, Over the years, different companies have tried this where, you know, every company, they try to get you all to sign up, and your kind of silver medalists get recirculated to other companies in the network. I think in some small scenarios, it's taken hold, but I think largely it's struggled to really succeed because,
That's
um,
true.
I just think there's some basic problems with like selection bias. Companies basically were incentivized to take the good ones, the true silver medalists, and not share them with the network, but hang on to them, and maybe
Mm,
I'll interview them next month. And everyone else,
mm.
I'll send to the network. And if everyone does that, then the network doesn't get a lot of value. So
Man,
I think it's just
you
hard
can deploy
I think it's just hard to make
again.
that work.
I just think bad things, Dan. You could even like falsely recommend some silver medalists that are definitely not silver medalists,
To your
just
competitors,
to
yeah.
just to damage the pipeline of your competitors. I mean, that could happen, right?
You've got some
Yeah,
dark thoughts.
I can't help it, man. I think it's a problem. I probably should seek help, but anyway, this has been a great conversation, Dan. I think it's one of these probably we should really continue having it because
Mm.
over time, as you say, it's moving so quickly. It might be useful to just do like a quarterly check-in on it, just to say, okay, where are we? Because we're going to have a different conversation. In that time frame, new products will come out, new behaviors will emerge that we haven't anticipated, and suddenly things that seem ridiculous yesterday actually seem right urgently required today. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, what's your final word to the audience, Dan? If you're speaking to a TA person right now and they're thinking, yeah, we really do need to improve our InfoSec on our recruitment side, like what do you recommend that they do?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think you have to know who you're hiring, and there's a security, there's an efficiency, a risk, and a cost associated with hiring. And in today's online world, in today's AI enabled world, you have to take steps to know who those people are. So whether it's what we're doing with Clear or some other way, you do need to know that those people are who they say they are along the way, so that you're hiring the person you thought you interviewed, you're interviewing the person you thought applied, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely right. And folks, a lot of this, the ID vetting, quality control, etc., is kind of a version of quality of hires wrapped in with that. And even though these are problems, without these problems, I don't think there'd be work to do. So this is work that requires recruiters to get into. So we just simply need to expand that slice of the pie in terms of where we devote our time. Securitization of the hiring funnel, that's your job, no one else's job. It's your job. So embrace it and get on with those conversations internally. Okay, Dan Che, listen, really great to see you, man. I hope you're having a good rest of the day. Thanks for sharing some of your insights and having this conversation. Been a real pleasure. And yeah, let's just check in again in a couple months and see where we're at with things, Dan.
Thanks for having me. Great to catch up as always.